Trevor strolled into the packed Sage Brew Café like he owned the place, surrounded by his usual group of friends who hung on his every word. The afternoon rush was in full swing, with every table occupied and a line of customers waiting for their orders. I was behind the counter, steaming milk and calling out drink names, when his voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife. "Look at that," he announced, pointing directly at me with theatrical emphasis. My sister Harper, still slinging coffee at 32 years old. Some people just never figure out how to aim higher in life. His friends erupted in laughter, the kind of cruel amusement that feeds on other people's supposed failures. Every customer in the cafe turned to stare at me, their expressions ranging from uncomfortable sympathy to curious entertainment. The barista beside me shifted nervously, unsure whether to intervene or pretend nothing was happening. I felt my cheeks burn with familiar humiliation, the same sensation I'd experienced countless times throughout our childhood when Trevor decided I needed to be reminded of my place. But instead of tears or anger, something cold and calculating settled in my chest. I wiped the counter methodically, maintaining eye contact with him while thinking, he has no idea I own the security camera footage that will document this moment forever. My name is Harper Ellis, and before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something for me. Comment below where you're watching from because I want to know how far this story travels. And please don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to share is a story of humiliation, betrayal, and a rise that absolutely nobody saw coming. This wasn't the first time Trevor had publicly mocked my career choices. For the past 4 years, ever since I started working at Sage Brew Café, he had made it his personal mission to remind everyone within earshot that his younger sister was just a barista while he climbed the corporate ladder in tech. What Trevor didn't know was that his latest performance had just triggered a plan that was already in motion. See, while he spent his time bragging about his management position and mocking my temporary job, I had been quietly observing, learning, and preparing for an opportunity that he couldn't even imagine. Some people talk about success. Others work toward it in silence, documenting every insult and storing every slight until the perfect moment arrives to prove exactly who understood the game better. That moment was about to arrive sooner than Trevor could possibly anticipate. The corporate supervisors arrived the following Tuesday, just as they did every quarter for routine inspections and performance reviews. The entire staff was nervous, moving with the careful precision that comes from being observed by people who could determine your future employment. But I wasn't panicked like my coworkers. Instead, I paid careful attention to the 2 executives as they reviewed our sales reports and operational procedures. They were older men, probably in their late 50s, and they carried themselves with the tired resignation of people who had been managing franchise locations for too many years. During their lunch break, I was refilling their coffee cups when I overheard a conversation that made my heart skip a beat. "Dempsey wants to retire this year," one of them said quietly to the other. "He's been running this location for 15 years, and he's ready to cash out." "Think corporate will buy it back?" the second executive asked. "Doubt it. They prefer independent franchise owners who understand the local market." My hand froze on the espresso machine as the implications hit me like lightning. The opportunity one had been waiting for, the chance I had been preparing for without even realizing it, had just opened up right in front of me. That evening at our family dinner, Trevor dominated the conversation with news about his latest professional triumph. He had been offered a management role at a new tech startup, and he was describing the opportunity with the kind of dramatic flair he usually reserved for his most important announcements. "The salary is nearly double what I'm making now," he bragged, cutting his steak with exaggerated precision. "Plus stock options and a company car. It's exactly the kind of position someone with real ambition works toward." He looked directly at me as he delivered his next line. "Some people are satisfied with temporary jobs, but I've always aimed higher. Harper, you should really start thinking about your future before you're too old to change careers." Our parents nodded approvingly, just as they always did when Trevor shared his professional updates. They had long ago accepted his narrative that I was the underachiever while he was the family success story. I smiled softly and said nothing, but inside I was calculating numbers and timelines. What Trevor didn't know was that I had already done some research on his new startup. I knew his potential manager had a reputation for being difficult to work with, and the company's financial backing was shakier than Trevor realized. His offer might not be as secure as he thought. Late that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, I spread business plan templates across my kitchen table and began the work that would change everything. I printed pages about franchise ownership, small business loans, and food service management requirements. Every document I taped to my wall became another piece of the strategy that was taking shape in my mind. I studied profit margins, operational costs, and customer retention statistics until my eyes burned from staring at numbers. The research revealed something crucial that Trevor's casual dismissal had never considered. Sage Brew Café was profitable, well located, and significantly undervalued compared to similar franchise opportunities in our area. I ran financial projections based on my 4 years of observing daily operations, seasonal patterns, and customer behavior. My insider knowledge of the business was worth more than any MBA when it came to understanding what this location could accomplish under different management. Most importantly, I discovered that the franchise's asking price was far lower than Trevor would ever believe possible. His assumption that owning a business required massive capital was about to be proven wrong by someone he considered incapable of aiming higher. The trap was beginning to take shape, and he had built it himself with years of underestimating me. Mr. Dempsey pulled me aside during the next morning's rush, his expression more serious than I had ever seen it. We walked to the back office, away from customers and coworkers who might overhear our conversation. "Harper, I need to talk to you about something important," he began, settling into his desk chair with the careful movements of someone whose back hurt from years of restaurant work. "I'm retiring at the end of this year." I kept my voice calm and professional, but inside I was trembling with anticipation. This was the moment I had been hoping for since overhearing the corporate executives. "You've always cared more about this place than anyone else," he continued, studying my face carefully. "You know our customers, you understand our operations, and you've never missed a shift in 4 years. I've been thinking about who should take over when I leave." The silence stretched between us as I processed the implications of what he was suggesting. This wasn't just about a job opening or a promotion. This was about ownership, independence, and the chance to prove that I understood exactly what this business could become. "I'd like to offer you the first opportunity to buy the franchise," Mr. Dempsey said finally, "before it goes on the public market." He slid a folder across the desk containing the preliminary sale price and financing options. Trevor visited the cafe again 2 days later, this time bringing a date he was clearly trying to impress. She was a professional-looking woman in her early 30s, dressed in the kind of business attire that suggested she held a position of authority somewhere important. They sat at the table nearest the counter, where Trevor could ensure his voice would carry to maximum effect when he began his performance. I was working the espresso machine when he launched into his familiar routine. "My sister doesn't really aim high," he told his date, gesturing toward me with casual cruelty. "She's been working here for years without any real ambition to move up or move on. Some people are just satisfied with simple jobs." His date looked uncomfortable with his public criticism of family, but Trevor seemed oblivious to her reaction. He was too focused on establishing his superiority to notice that his behavior was actually diminishing him in her eyes. I continued steaming milk and calling out drink orders, maintaining my professional composure while filing away every word for future reference. But inside, I whispered a single word that carried all the weight of my growing determination: noted. That night, I began the loan application process, using the preliminary sale information Mr. Dempsey had provided to calculate exactly how much financing I would need to make this transformation possible. Mr. Dempsey became my silent mentor over the following weeks, reviewing my business proposal and offering guidance that came from 15 years of hands-on franchise experience. We met early in the mornings, before the cafe opened, to discuss financial projections and operational improvements I could implement under new ownership. "Your plan is solid," he told me after reviewing my third draft of the business proposal. "You understand this location better than anyone, and your ideas for expanding our catering services and evening hours could significantly increase revenue. But then his expression became more serious. Harper, I need to warn you about something important. Don't tell anyone about this opportunity, especially family members. Business deals can get complicated when emotions and personal relationships are involved. His advice carried the weight of experience with situations I could only imagine. I nodded, understanding that my success would depend on maintaining absolute secrecy until the purchase was finalized. 2 weeks later, I received the phone call that changed everything. My loan application had been pre-approved. The bank was willing to finance my purchase of the Sage Brew Café franchise, contingent on final reviews and documentation. I hung up the phone with steady hands, but my heart was racing with the realization that Trevor's temporarily employed sister was about to become a business owner. The loan officer scheduled our final meeting for the following Friday, but her warning came with conditions that made my stomach tighten with anxiety. Ms. Ellis, your loan approval is contingent on maintaining current employment until the closing date, she explained, reviewing the documents spread across her desk. Any gaps in employment or changes to your work status could jeopardize your eligibility for financing. The implication was clear. I needed to stay employed at Sage Brew Café until I could officially purchase it. Any disruption to my income or employment record could destroy the entire plan before it reached completion. Additionally, she continued, the seller has requested a 60-day closing period to ensure a smooth transition. During that time, you'll need to maintain absolute confidentiality about the pending sale. I agreed to all conditions, but a nagging worry was growing in the back of my mind. Trevor's pattern of interference in my life had been escalating, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he might do something to jeopardize my employment before I could complete the purchase. His timing had always been terrible when it came to respecting boundaries or understanding consequences. I just hoped his next attempt at humiliating me wouldn't come at the worst possible moment for my carefully constructed plan. I had no idea how close that disaster was to arriving. Trevor stormed into the cafe the following Monday with the kind of aggressive energy that meant trouble for everyone around him. He bypassed the ordering line and marched directly to the counter, holding a cup from our competitor down the street. "This drink is wrong," he announced loudly, slamming the cup down with enough force to splash coffee across my workspace. "I ordered a vanilla latte, and this tastes like garbage. I want Harper written up for incompetence, or I want her fired." Every customer in the cafe turned to watch the confrontation, their conversations falling silent as they processed the spectacle of someone publicly attacking an employee over what was obviously not our product. My manager, Angela, emerged from the back office with the kind of calm authority that comes from years of dealing with difficult customers. She examined the cup Trevor had slammed down, noting immediately that it bore the logo of Grind Coffee, our main competitor. "Sir, this cup is from another establishment," Angela said clearly, her voice carrying throughout the cafe. "We cannot be held responsible for beverages we did not prepare. I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately." Trevor's face flushed red with embarrassment as he realized his mistake had been witnessed by a room full of people. He grabbed the cup and stormed out without another word, but the damage to his credibility was already done. Angela turned to me with obvious support. "Are you okay?" That was completely inappropriate behavior. 2 days later, I received an anonymous email that made my blood run cold. The message was sent from a generic account, but the writing style was unmistakably Trevor's, complete with his characteristic mixture of arrogance and grammatical errors. "Harper Ellis has been showing unprofessional behavior toward customers and should be investigated by management. Her attitude problems are affecting the cafe's reputation and creating hostile environment for patrons. Someone should look into this before it gets worse." The threat was clear. Trevor was trying to create a paper trail that could cost me my job. He didn't know about my pending business purchase, but his interference could destroy my loan eligibility if it resulted in termination or disciplinary action. Instead of panicking, I made a calculated decision that would ultimately strengthen my position. I forwarded the email to corporate headquarters with a brief note explaining that I had received an anonymous complaint and wanted to address any concerns about my performance proactively. I also attached character references from regular customers, sales reports showing my consistent performance, and security camera footage from Trevor's recent outburst. If someone was going to investigate my professionalism, they would have access to complete documentation rather than anonymous accusations. The response from corporate exceeded my expectations and revealed something about my reputation that Trevor had never understood. Corporate's reply arrived within 24 hours, and their message contained validation I hadn't expected to receive. The regional manager had reviewed all documentation, including security footage of Trevor's disruption, and their conclusion was unequivocal. Dear Harper, thank you for bringing this situation to our attention. We have reviewed the anonymous complaint along with your performance records and the security footage from Monday's incident. Your handling of that difficult situation demonstrated exactly the kind of professionalism we value in our franchise locations. The email continued with praise that made my chest swell with pride. Your customer service ratings are consistently excellent, your attendance record is perfect, and multiple customers have specifically commended your friendly and efficient service. We appreciate employees who take initiative in addressing potential issues. But the final paragraph contained an opportunity that could change my career trajectory even beyond my current plans. Please let us know if you are ever interested in pursuing leadership positions within our franchise system. We believe you have demonstrated the qualities we look for in management candidates. Corporate had just offered me advancement opportunities on the same day Trevor was trying to get me fired. His attempt to sabotage my career had backfired so completely that it actually enhanced my professional reputation with the people who mattered most. I saved the email carefully, knowing it would become part of my transition documentation when I revealed my new ownership status. News traveled fast in our small town, and by Thursday evening, everyone knew that Trevor had been fired from his tech startup for what they diplomatically called insubordination and cultural misalignment. At our weekly family dinner, Trevor dominated the conversation with his version of events, painting himself as the victim of workplace politics and unreasonable management expectations. They wanted me to compromise my principles, he complained, cutting his food with angry precision. I refused to participate in their toxic culture of false positivity and mindless corporate compliance. He looked around the table, seeking sympathy that our parents were reluctant to provide given his recent pattern of job instability. This is all temporary anyway, he continued, his voice growing more defensive. I have multiple opportunities in the pipeline, and I'm being selective about company culture fit. Then his gaze landed on me, and I saw the familiar spark that meant he was about to redirect his frustration in my direction. At least I'm not stuck in the same dead-end job for years without any ambition for advancement. After dinner, our mother pulled me aside in the kitchen. He's jealous, she whispered, glancing toward the living room where Trevor was loudly describing his job search strategy. Always has been. You just never see it because you don't fight back. The loan officer called Friday morning with the final approval I had been waiting for. Every document had been reviewed, every condition had been satisfied, and the purchase date was officially scheduled for the end of the month. Congratulations, Ms. Ellis, she said, and I could hear the genuine excitement in her voice. You're about to become a business owner. The closing is set for next Friday at 2 o'clock. I hung up the phone and sat in my car for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what was about to happen. In 8 days, I would officially own the Sage Brew Café where Trevor had publicly mocked my lack of ambition just weeks earlier. But as I walked toward the cafe entrance to start my shift, I noticed Trevor's car parked across the street. He was sitting behind the wheel, staring at the building with the kind of desperate expression that meant his job search wasn't going as well as he had claimed. When I unlocked the cafe door, he immediately got out of his car and approached me with the hesitant step of someone who needed to ask for help but wasn't sure how to begin. Harper, he called out, his voice lacking the usual confidence that characterized our interactions. Can I talk to you for a minute? I need to ask you something important. Trevor cornered me outside the cafe after my shift ended, his usual arrogance replaced by something approaching desperation. The swagger that had characterized his public mockery was gone, replaced by the uncomfortable posture of someone who needed help from someone he had consistently dismissed. "Look, I heard you have some influence with the management here," he began, avoiding direct eye contact. "They told me at the employment office that current employees can put in good words for family members who need work." I watched him struggle with the humiliation of asking his underachieving sister for professional assistance, filing away every uncomfortable pause and desperate gesture for future reference. "The thing is," he continued, "I really need something stable while I wait for the right management opportunity to come along. I was thinking maybe I could work here temporarily, just until my real career gets back on track." The irony was so perfect that I had to concentrate on keeping my expression neutral. Trevor was asking me to help him get hired at the business I was about to own, completely unaware that his employment would soon depend entirely on my approval. "I'll consider it," I said finally, pretending to weigh his request thoughtfully. "Let me see what I can do." That afternoon, I signed the final purchase agreement, officially beginning the countdown to the most satisfying reversal of fortune I could have imagined. Signing day arrived with crisp autumn sunshine streaming through the law office windows where I finalized the most important transaction of my life. The paperwork was extensive, but every signature brought me closer to the moment when Trevor's mockery would transform into career dependence. Mr. Dempsey sat beside me throughout the process, his expression mixing pride and relief as he transferred ownership of the business he had built over 15 years. "You're going to do great things with this place," he told me as we completed the final documents. The notary stamped the last page, and I officially became the owner of Sagebrew Café. The keys felt warm in my palm as I walked through my business for the first time as its proprietor, touching the countertops I had scrubbed as an employee and visualizing the improvements I would implement as owner. Corporate had scheduled the formal announcement for Monday morning, when they would introduce me to the staff and begin the transition process. Until then, the ownership transfer remained confidential, known only to the lawyers and banking officials involved in the purchase. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Trevor. "Any update on that job situation? I really need to get started as soon as possible. This unemployment thing is killing me financially." I responded that I would have news for him very soon, which was absolutely true in ways he couldn't imagine. Monday morning brought corporate representatives who arrived early to prepare for the ownership announcement. Angela gathered all employees in the main cafe area, her expression suggesting this was a significant company development rather than routine business. "We have an exciting announcement about the future leadership of this location," she began, gesturing toward the corporate executives who had arranged themselves near the counter. "Sagebrew Café has been purchased by someone who understands our operations intimately and has demonstrated exceptional commitment to our success." I stood in the back of the group, maintaining the same neutral expression I had worn as an employee while internally preparing for the moment that would change every workplace dynamic I had known for 4 years. "Please join me in congratulating our new franchise owner," the corporate representative announced, Harper Ellis. The applause was immediate and genuine, with coworkers who had watched me work beside them suddenly realizing that I had been planning something far beyond their expectations. Several people looked shocked, but their surprise quickly shifted to excitement about working for someone they knew and respected. The front door chimed at exactly the wrong moment, and Trevor walked in expecting to inquire about the job opportunity he thought I might be able to arrange for him. Instead, he heard my name being announced as the new owner of the business where he had publicly mocked my lack of ambition. Trevor froze in the doorway as the implications of what he was hearing crashed over him like cold water. His expression shifted from confident expectation to confused disbelief to something approaching horror as he processed the announcement. "Please join us in congratulating our new franchise owner, Harper Ellis," the corporate representative repeated, gesturing directly toward me as staff members applauded and cheered. Trevor's date from his previous visit happened to be standing near the counter, having stopped for coffee on her way to work. She looked impressed as she realized that the woman Trevor had publicly dismissed as unambitious was actually successful enough to purchase her own business. "I had no idea your sister was an entrepreneur," she said to Trevor, her voice carrying clearly across the cafe. That's really impressive. You must be so proud of her accomplishments. Trevor stammered something incoherent, his face cycling through shades of red as he struggled to reconcile his narrative about my limitations with the reality of my actual achievement. Several customers who had witnessed his previous mockery were now watching his reaction with obvious curiosity, waiting to see how he would respond to discovering that his underachieving sister had just been revealed as someone successful enough to own the business where he had humiliated her. The silence stretched uncomfortably long as Trevor realized that everything he had said about my career was about to be proven spectacularly wrong. I approached Trevor with the calm professionalism of a business owner addressing a potential employee, enjoying every second of his obvious discomfort as our roles reversed in front of an audience. Trevor, I understand you were interested in employment opportunities here, I said, my voice carrying the authority of someone who now controlled his potential income. Please come to my office so we can discuss what positions might be available. He followed me reluctantly to the back office that had once belonged to Mr. Dempsey, his usual confidence completely evaporated. I gestured for him to sit in the chair across from the desk where I now conducted business. You mentioned needing work while you search for management positions, I continued, opening the folder that contained employment applications and job descriptions. I can certainly offer you a position that matches your current qualifications and experience. Trevor leaned forward slightly, perhaps hoping that family connection might result in preferential treatment despite his previous behavior. What kind of position? He asked, his voice smaller than I had heard it since childhood. I slid the employee handbook across the desk, open to the section describing entry-level responsibilities and reporting structures. The position I can offer you is Café Associate, entry-level, I said clearly. The starting wage is $12 per hour, with potential for advancement based on performance. Trevor flipped through the handbook pages, reading the job description with growing humiliation. The position I was offering required following orders from supervisors, wearing a uniform, and performing the same customer service tasks he had mocked me for doing just weeks earlier. You're joking, he said finally, looking up from the handbook with an expression that mixed disbelief with desperate hope that this was some kind of elaborate prank. I maintained my neutral smile and professional demeanor. It's what you're qualified for, Trevor. You have no food service experience, no retail management background, and no demonstrated leadership abilities in customer-facing roles. The truth of my assessment was undeniable, even to him. His tech career had been entirely behind-the-scenes work, and his recent firing had eliminated any management credentials he might have claimed. This is a legitimate job offer with opportunities for growth, I continued. You'll receive employee benefits, flexible scheduling, and training in all aspects of cafe operations. Many successful managers in our industry started in exactly this type of position. Trevor stared at the handbook for several long minutes, his pride warring with his financial necessity. He was unemployed, facing mounting bills, and desperately in need of income regardless of how it might affect his ego. The uniform requirement is non-negotiable, I added, as is following all employee policies regarding professional conduct and customer service standards. He signed the employment agreement because he was broke and had no other options. Trevor's first shift was a masterpiece of humiliating role reversal that I observed from behind the counter while he struggled to learn tasks I had mastered years earlier. He wore the standard Sagebrew Café uniform, complete with name tag and company-issued apron, taking orders from the same coworkers who had witnessed his previous mockery of my career. The learning curve was steep and publicly embarrassing. He confused drink orders, struggled with the cash register system, and moved with the awkward uncertainty of someone completely unfamiliar with food service operations. Trevor, can you remake that cappuccino? Called Angela, who was now his direct supervisor. The customer said it's not hot enough. I watched him fumble with the espresso machine, his face flushed with the kind of humiliation he had once inflicted on me. The customers waiting for their orders seemed amused by his obvious inexperience, whispering among themselves about the role reversal they were witnessing. Several regular customers recognized him from his previous visits and his loud commentary about my supposed lack of ambition. They exchanged glances that suggested they were enjoying the irony of seeing him struggle with work he had dismissed as beneath his capabilities. Table 4 is still waiting for their breakfast order, Angela announced. Trevor, please check on their status and apologize for the delay. A customer complaint about Trevor's attitude brought our relationship full circle in the most satisfying way possible. Mrs. Henderson, one of our regular customers, approached the counter during the afternoon rush with the kind of serious expression that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Excuse me, she said, clearly seeking management attention. I need to speak with whoever is in charge about the attitude I just received from your employee. I stepped forward with the calm authority of a business owner addressing a legitimate concern. I'm Harper Ellis, the owner. How can I help you? That young man was rude and dismissive when I asked about modifying my order, Mrs. Henderson explained, gesturing toward Trevor, who was pretending to be busy cleaning tables. He acted like my request was an inconvenience. I nodded seriously, knowing that customer service was the foundation of our business success. I apologize for that experience. Let me address this immediately. Trevor, I called clearly, my voice carrying the kind of firm authority I had never been able to exercise over him before. Please come here and remake Mrs. Henderson's order correctly, with the attitude adjustment she deserves as a valued customer. My leadership was professional but unmistakable, demonstrating exactly the kind of competence Trevor had claimed I could never possess. He nearly quit on the spot but desperately needed the paycheck I now controlled. After closing time, Trevor confronted me in the empty cafe with a mixture of resentment and grudging recognition that his situation was entirely of his own making. You think you're better than me now, he said, his voice carrying the petulant tone of someone who couldn't accept responsibility for the consequences of their choices. I continued wiping down tables and stacking chairs, maintaining my professional focus while he processed whatever emotions were driving his need for confrontation. I never said I was better than you, I replied calmly, not looking up from my cleaning routine. I just stopped letting you convince me that I was worse. The distinction was important, and I could see him struggling to understand the difference between competence and arrogance, between earned authority and inherited privilege. You've been planning this whole thing, he accused, as if my strategic thinking was somehow unfair rather than intelligent. I've been working towards something while you've been talking about what you deserved, I corrected. There's a difference between preparation and entitlement. I finished my closing tasks and gathered my keys, preparing to leave my own business while he stood among the chairs and tables where he now worked for me. See you tomorrow for your shift, I said, walking away while he remained behind, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. 6 months later, I signed the papers to open a second Sagebrew Café location across town, an expansion that represented the success of my strategic vision and operational improvements. My employees celebrated the news with genuine enthusiasm, proud to work for a company that was growing through competent leadership rather than empty promises. Trevor had evolved into a reliable if unremarkable employee, his initial resistance replaced by grudging acceptance of workplace hierarchy and professional standards. He performed his duties adequately but without the enthusiasm or innovation that might earn him advancement. Corporate invited me to speak at their regional conference about successful franchise operations and community engagement strategies. The invitation represented recognition from industry leaders who valued actual achievement over theoretical credentials. My confidence was unshakable now, built on the foundation of real accomplishment rather than family approval or external validation. I had proven to myself that underestimation could be transformed into advantage when met with strategic persistence and professional competence. Trevor's mockery had inadvertently taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. Other people's opinions about my limitations said more about their own insecurities than about my actual potential. The business continued growing because good work speaks louder than criticism, and authentic leadership earns respect that entitlement can never achieve. I drove past the original Sagebrew Café early one morning to see Trevor opening the shop, unlocking the doors and turning on the lights for a business that belonged to the sister he had once mocked for lacking ambition. The sight filled me with quiet satisfaction rather than vindictive triumph. This wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about discovering who I was when I stopped believing other people's stories about my limitations. Being underestimated isn't an insult, I said aloud, watching the sunrise reflect off the windows of my successful business. It's an advantage that reveals who actually understands the difference between competence and competence. Trevor no longer contacted me outside of work-related issues. No begging for special treatment, no attempts to leverage family connection for professional benefit. Our relationship had settled into the professional courtesy that exists between a competent manager and a reliable employee. The transformation was complete and irreversible. He would continue working for the sister he had dismissed, and I would continue building success on the foundation of strategic patience and authentic achievement. I didn't rise to spite him, I concluded, pulling away from the cafe where my journey from employee to owner had taught me everything about turning obstacles into opportunities. I rose because he taught me exactly what I never want to be. Peace and progress. No drama, no contact, just the quiet satisfaction of competence recognized and properly rewarded.